Hello and welcome to Improving Scottish Football. My name is Kieran, and today on the podcast, we're asking, why are Croatia so damn good at football? They've got a population of around 4 million people, which is fewer than Scotland, yet they are capable of getting to the World Cup final. So, how the hell did they do it? The man answering the question is Ian Coll, who is a progressive Scottish coach who lives and works in that part of the world. He is going to be pulling back the curtain and sharing some learnings with us. So this is a really good episode. There's some great stuff in here and hopefully a lot of learnings that we can take and implement in Scotland. Please do like, share and subscribe, all that good stuff. And also, please leave a review if you haven't done so. That would be hugely appreciated. Let's keep this going. Let's improve Scottish football. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Ian Coll. Ian, how are you?
I'm good, Kieran. Thanks very much. Thank you for inviting me on the show.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure to have you. So, can you give us an introduction to yourself and, I guess, a little bit about your career in football?
Yeah, my name's Ian Coll. This is my 17th season in football this year. My career started in Celtic, in the youth academy. For 8 years, I was at Celtic Academy. I moved from there to the Federation in the UAE, in Dubai, in the Emirates. From there, I moved to Livingston in Bulgaria for 3 years, then to Romania with University Craiova for 1 season, then on to Hajduk for 18 months, and currently in Bulgaria with Partick.
Cool. And so that was Hajduk Split, is that right? How do you actually
split?
Yeah. How do you actually?
Hajduk. Yeah.
Hajduk. Okay. That's
Hajduk Split. Yeah.
Right. I've been butchering that for some time.
Yeah, a lot of foreign people do, especially the
UK. Cool. So really fascinating career. And one of the reasons that I really wanted to get you on is obviously because you've got that experience working in Scotland, and you've then got all this other really interesting experience working in some interesting nations. In particular, Croatia, I guess, jumps out at me because they're a nation with a population smaller than Scotland, and they're able to do phenomenal things, specifically at international level. So we'll obviously get into some of those things later on in the pod, but I guess the first thing I'd like to talk about is your time at Celtic. Presumably you worked with the likes of Tierney and McGregor. What was that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, my first job was actually Airdrie United, the first division. I should have mentioned that when I was at university. From there, I moved to the academy at Celtic, moved from sports scientist to the head of sports science for the academy over the 4 years. Fantastic time. I mean, I still have great memories from there, working with players like Kieran, Callum McGregor, James Forrest, Liam Henderson, who now plays in Serie B. Some fantastic players come through that age group when I was there. A lot of them are playing professional football this moment. So for me, it was a great time before I progressed to the first team there for 4 years, where I finished as head of sports science for the club. So that time was great, working with the kids. I think you sort of touched on Croatia there, which is probably nice to pull that in at this moment, because my career's taken me over the sort of Balkan area and Eastern Europe. And when I was here in Croatia, you hear about Croatia, doing fantastic things in the national team. Every year they're in a quarterfinal, semi-final, or final. 4 million population. It's incredible. And I started to think, well, I mean, how is that possible? How is that possible? What's the difference between us in Scotland compared to Croatia with a smaller population? And I think that there's probably two things for me. The main thing is that the kids play sport all day, and they play multi-sports. Football's not a priority at an early age. They play tennis, they have swimming, they have handball, they have water polo, they have athletics. It's still quite high here. And the kids play in the street. They have cage football. I think probably every 200 or 300 meters, they have purpose-built cage footballs at the swing parks for the kids. So these cages are all enclosed. The kids just open the door and they go in and they play, and it's free. They don't play. They don't pay to play. And it's multi-ages. With all of this bio-banding we have in the UK, you have a 14-year-old in with a 10-year-old, and they have to learn different skills. not only physically but cognitively, how to deal with that situation. It's a mentality thing as well. So I think if you look at football and multi-sports, it's probably a big change compared to the UK. I mean, I haven't been in the UK now for 7 years, so I'm a little bit out of touch with what they do at the academy, but people I do speak to, it sounds like it's still the same in terms of the demand of the football is so high that the kids are not involved in other sports and not participating in other sports. If you put that with the biobanding they have, then the kids are, I think, limited in terms of their exposure to football and to different situations and different scenarios, playing against people with different bodies and skill sets and minds who are a little bit older than them. So I think those two things I see very, very clearly, especially in Scotland, I think in the UK as a whole, compared to Croatia. If that makes sense, I hope it makes sense.
Oh, that does make sense. That's really interesting. So the young players are, I guess, encouraged not to just focus on football. Then they're encouraged to have a wide range of different sporting experience.
Yeah, that's correct. And I think the parents encourage that. It's just a nation, they encourage it. It's not like, my 10-year-old kid now signs for Aberdeen and they only play for Aberdeen. They train 4 times a week and they play the game for Aberdeen. No. It's they still play for the school. They still do the PE lessons and they still go to swim and they still go to tennis. It's not a shutdown of sport and exposure. And I think that's detrimental. I believe it's detrimental as someone who is a sports scientist involved in sport. And if I look at not just football, but other sports, I think it's detrimental because there's other skills that you learn from competing in other sports. And I think from playing against kids with higher skill sets or different skill sets or older age groups or higher cognitive level, or higher physical level, you have to adapt and evolve your own skill set to adapt to that situation. If you only play with your team and your structure and your age and your skill level, you just learn that over the years. And then it comes to the point the kids are 16, 18, and they've only been exposed to one sort of certain situation. And now they come up against a European team and they can't deal with that situation because the football is different, mentality is different, the atmosphere is different, decisions are different, the game's quicker, the game's more physical, the game's more technical, the game's more tactical. So everything changes in that one moment and the kids are not adaptable enough to deal with it.
And before we went on air, you were also saying that a lot of these kids who are, even as young as, 10, let's say, they are really clued up on the tactical side of the game and they're quite engaged in asking questions of coaches and really quite switched on. Is that right?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, if I look at now, okay, if I compare all the countries I've worked in, if I take Bulgaria first, I think Bulgaria has probably gone backwards in terms of their youth development. I think at one moment they had a real mentality, desire to win street football development pathway. Now it's very structured, mentality is a lot lower. If I look at Romania, I think Romania still has that street football, street capacity, very technical players, but tactically very low. And then if we move to Croatia, and this is what, for me, I see the real difference between Bulgaria, Romania, and especially Scotland, is the tactical level of the kids, I feel is a very high level. The kids at young ages are asking good tactical questions that have relevance to the practice, to their position, and to their development. So for me, that moment, I think, wow, a kid at 13-year-old is asking me about his tactical components or principles in this drill. I think, wow, that's fantastic. And it's not just a question I'm asking the coach a question, I've got to say something. It's an actual development question, which tells me about their understanding, their cognitive understanding of this practice, this situation, and their own development is fantastic at that age. Fantastic. But what we could do is maybe be better. And I think that's always the case. It's always the case. You've got to question yourself, what can we do better? And I think the one area that we can do better is probably tactically, because technically we have fantastic players. If you look at now the first team, I think I said this to you as well, Kieran, that Steve Clarke has made a massive impact in Scottish football in the national team because tactically he's very aware. And tactically, the Scottish national team are playing a fantastic game. Fantastic game. They can defend under pressure and are willing to defend under pressure. They can attack with numbers and be committed to the attacking principles. So for me, he's changed the way that Scottish football is being played at our club level, at national level. I think it's fantastic to see. I think he's done a great job.
So I think probably historically, it's maybe been fair to say that in Scotland, we've not necessarily been the most progressive when it comes to tactics and style of play. Obviously, you're referencing Steve Clarke, obviously, being very good at that. Do you think that we are beginning to move into a better era, perhaps? There's obviously a new generation of coaches coming through. A lot of the maybe more old school managers are perhaps leaving our game. Yeah, what do you think?
Look, I did some research this morning for you. I looked at Scotland, Croatia, and Portugal. So I took the last games from the weekend there, and I looked at how many national homegrown players are playing in the teams per the league. So we look at Scotland. Scotland have 12 teams. Okay, they totaled of 44 players from Scotland playing in the teams. That gives them an average of 3.6 players each team. Croatia has 10 teams in the league. They had 75 Croatians playing in the games, which gives them an average of 7.5 players per team. I looked at Portugal. Yeah, I looked at Portugal. 18 teams, which is a total of 72 players they had playing from Portugal in the league, which gives them an average of 4. So we were actually the lowest. Now, I know there's a population difference. Portugal have 10.2. We have 5.4, but Croatia have 4 million. They had 75 players from Croatia playing in the league out of 10 teams, which is an average of 7.5 players each team. The lowest was actually Hajduk, my last team, which was 5. And I think that's just one weekend I looked at and think, so what's been happening over the years? If this is just one snapshot of the weekend, I thought it was fascinating. I just did it from my own personal, before I came on the show to see if anything interesting popped up, because we were going to speak about this, and it's I don't want to say alarming, but it's fascinating.
Yeah, that is fascinating, and it won't come as a surprise to anyone, because there is quite a big conversation within Scottish football at the moment about the lack of young in particular, but in general the lack of Scottish players playing in the Premiership. But yeah, those statistics, when you compare it to the Croatian top flight, that is terrifying, because they have got over double the amount per team. 7.5 players per team are Croatian.
Yeah.
So, and presumably that is also a big reason why their national team is doing so well.
I agree. I mean, if you look at how many Croatian players play in the top 5 teams in Europe, it's incredible. It's incredible how many play, in Spain, in England, in Italy, in France. How many Croatian players are playing? It's unbelievable. I'm sure people listening can name those players. And I actually went and looked at how many Scottish players are playing. In the Premier League, we have, I think maybe 7, 8. Billy Gilmore, Andy Robertson, Scott McTominay, Nathan Patterson, Ben Dock, Ryan Christie. There's a few others. La Liga, we only have Kieran Tierney. In Serie A, we have 2. We have Lewis Ferguson and Josh Doig.
Yeah.
And that's it. And that's England. So we only have 3 players outside of Scotland. Kieran Tierney, Lewis Ferguson, Josh Doig. I think I'm right. The only 3 players playing in the top 5 leagues in the world. And this is why I go back to the tactical point, is that I think the Scottish national team are now overperforming due to the tactical awareness of the head coach. Now, if we take that down to grassroots level, and I think you mentioned that there, and I've just gone through my SFA UEFA A license award, so I'm fresh off the course, and I think that they are trying to tackle it with the tactical awareness. I think the tactical components is higher than it's ever been. The portfolio that you have to do is in depth and get you thinking. Can we go further? Can we go a stage further? I think we can. I think the expectation for the A license can be higher, especially in Scotland. If we want to improve our own game, I don't know about other federations, but I think if we look at ourselves inwards, and this is what the show's about, is to try and develop our Scottish identity and who we are as a footballing nation. What I hear all the time, and this is interesting, that people say to me, Scotland, they kick it up the park, they run and they fight. And I'm like, wow, really? Is that what we are? Are we still that team? Really? And I think, no, we're not. I said, look at Celtic, look at Rangers. And I tried to justify, and then I think, but Celtic at the weekend only had one Scottish player. Rangers only had one Scottish player in their team at the weekend. Celtic had 3. And I'm trying to justify Scottish football to foreigners, and then I don't want them to come back and say, well, actually, your 2 biggest teams have only got 4 players between them who are Scottish. So I think that we have to look deep within ourselves. And, I'm not involved in the Scottish game. I have friends there, and I try to stay in contact, try to stay in touch. And it's always my dream one day to go back and to work there in my own home nation and try and apply some of my own experience and knowledge to develop the game there.
Great. Well, I want to touch on the A license that you've just done with the SFA in a minute. Just to nip back to the fact that Croatia have got 75 Croatian players playing in their top flight
from 10 teams.
Because I need to dig into it. Yeah, from 10 teams. Well, okay. I do need to dig into this just a tad more, because you've also got them playing, a lot of Croatian players playing within the top 5 leagues, as you say as well. Mm-hmm. So is there quite a clear system whereby Croatian players come into the first teams quite young, maybe play for 2, 3, 4 years, and then there's a player trading model that just lets them go to top 5 leagues? Is that like quite a recognized pathway?
I think the football is respected in Croatia via the national team. Dinamo Zagreb compete every year in Europa League or Champions League. Last year they beat Chelsea. So they have a respectful competitive level at home with Dinamo Zagreb, and they have a very, very competitive level for their nation in their national team. They always qualify for the championships. They always go to the semi-final, final. So I think the pathway for the young Croatian footballer is clear, that if I can get to first team Croatian football, there's a pathway for me to go to play to Italy. There's a pathway for me to go to play in England. There's a pathway for me to go to play in Spain, because of the level of player that I will be if I come through this system and play in the Croatian league. The young kids will always get a chance here. If I look at my last team, Hajduk, we had quite a few foreign players. This year, they've actually went out and bought Croatian players. When you think about, they've never won the league in, how many years now? 17 years. They're trying to compete with Dinamo, but they want Croatian players to win the Croatian league. They're not going out and buying foreign players to try to beat Dinamo. And I think that's fantastic. If you think about that, that's fantastic. And if we think about other teams in Scotland, can we have a comparison? Aberdeen, Hibs, Hearts, talking about those 3 teams. Can those 3 teams have a strong academy? I'm not saying they're not strong at the moment. I'm saying strong academy, but develop a tactical level which will allow them to compete with Celtic and Rangers, no matter how many foreign players they buy. Now, people will say, yeah, okay, no problem. Yeah, it's easy to say. No, I know it's easy to say, but we really need to think about it. And can we do it? Can we do it with no budget? I'll talk about Hajduk again. Hajduk have one AstroTurf pitch where all the academy train, from under 9s to under 19s. One AstroTurf pitch. And some of those kids only use half a pitch. Now, if that was to happen in Scotland, can you imagine the coaches and the players' response to that? Coach, we only have half a pitch. Coach, the AstroTurf is this. Coach, the AstroTurf is this. No, facilities are nothing. It's about coaching. It's about mentality. And it's about desire to have a career in football. It's not only about facilities and, what boots you wear. Some of these kids come from nothing. And they have desire to play football at the highest level and listen to the coach. And the coach has the passion to develop them from a tactical level. Hajduk itself, first team, only have one grass pitch. So the second best team in Croatian football has one AstroTurf pitch for all the academy and one grass pitch for the first team. That's it.
Wow.
Now, when I tell people that, they think, no, it's not true. And it's true. I can send you the video. It's true.
Wow.
So every team in Scotland has better facilities than Hajduk. Hajduk last year, under-19s, went to UEFA Cup final for under-19s. If you remember the run they went on. They went to UEFA Cup final. They beat Dortmund, they beat Man City.
Yeah. Yeah. I was about to say that. I mean, that was a phenomenal run. And I mean, what presumably that under-19 side is what, 100% Croatian?
Yes, 100% Croatian. I think the centre back, Luka Vuskovic, will probably go to Tottenham for £10 million. He's 16 years old.
Wow.
So
and so that run, again, I'm just trying to work out how that, obviously I've got very limited knowledge of that specific set, but how the hell did they do that? When is it? Because knocking out the likes of Man City, who have got the pick of the world,
millions. They spent millions on the team.
Yeah. So is it just really good tactics? Is it just really good talent? Is it the players, just the work ethic? Is it just a blend of all these different things, or what's the magic sauce?
Oh, the magic bullet, the answer to the magic question. If I knew that, I think I'd be in a top job in Europe. So, I think I think we've got to look at us as a nation. I think we have to compare. I think Croatia for me is a great comparison because of population size. And I think in terms of football mentality, that they love football as much as we love football. We have that same mentality. It's very, very clear for me. When I speak to people here about football, they're passionate. When I speak to people in Scotland, they're passionate. I think we have to look at us as a nation, identify how we want to see Scottish football being played. Do we want a defensive counter-attack team? Do we want a possession-based football team? Do we want a high-energy attacking pressing team? How do we want to identify us as a nation, as a country? And then we have to go with that. And we really have to go with it. Okay, we can adapt. We always can adapt. But, Holland have a Dutch style. Italy have an Italian style. Croatia have a Croatian style. Spanish have a Spanish style. It's very, very Portuguese have a Portuguese style. It's very, very clear. These nations have a clear style of football. And you see that in the top teams. And you see that in their national team as well. And I don't think we have that in Scotland. So if we take a young kid in Scotland, if I take the same journey of a 9-year-old, my son is 8 years old, who plays football here in Croatia. Now I can say his under-8s is competitive football. It's competitive. Those kids play to win. They will tackle to win. They will push. They will kick. They will fight for that ball, and they will win. And if they do not win, they will be upset. Now, this might upset some people, but sport is competitive. And to play sport, you must compete. There's sport for recreation and there's sport for competitive. Sport for me is competitive. So when I play football, it's competition. And I take my son, and if I think when he goes back to Scotland and he plays football in the sort of summer camps, and it's fun and it's nice and it's easy, and I put him in a Croatian football camp, oh my God, the difference. There's a big, big difference in terms of competitive level.
Really?
Huge difference. Huge, huge difference. And that's all the sports. My son plays tennis. My son is 8 years old and played under 10 tennis tournament. And you should see the level of competitiveness. It's huge. It's incredible. I was like, this is maybe a little bit too much, because it's under 8s, it's under 10s, but I'm thinking they're onto something. It's by no coincidence,
That's so interesting, because I've always considered ourselves as a really competitive nation, so it's interesting to hear that that we don't meet the mark when compared to the likes of Croatia.
I think again, I don't want to be disrespectful to anyone in Scotland or my own nation, but I think we've maybe lost a little bit of that identity. I spoke about Kieran Tierney, a few times on podcasts. And Kieran Tierney, for me, is a dying breed of Scottish football player. He is the ultimate competitor. him at youth level, I mean, I can't explain how competitive that kid was. He would be more than Croatia. He would be more than Croatia. If he was in Croatia, he'd be the top. Now I look at the other kids that were in that team, they're less than what Croatia were, you know, but he is, for me, the last of a dying breed of competitive Scottish football player. The old Scottish football player that we love and adore, if you talk about that, you know, who have blood in their shirt, who go into every tackle, who do not want to lose, will play through the pain, will put their head in the line for the team. You know, it's the heart and soul of the team. You know, he thinks about the team, it's not just him, and he wants to win. And I think he's, what I see in Scottish football, he's the last of that sort of player, you know. And I think if we want to go down that pathway, that's our team, that we defend for our life and we counter-attack and we try to win the game, then we need to incorporate that into our academy, or we want to change and become a more European style where it's possession-based. You know, we look for rotations of players. We look to attack and defend at the same time. We have structure, we have balance. We look to break the lines, penetrate. We look to have 1v1s on the outside. If we want this type of football, then we have to put that, you know, within the academy setup. And I think, if I think about it now, I'm thinking out loud. And Croatia, they're encouraged. They're encouraged to show their skill level in every opportunity. So when they receive the ball, they're encouraged at every moment to show their ability and never be punished or shouted at or, you know, told otherwise for trying to do what they think is correct. Because if you think about it, no kid wants to make a mistake when they play football. No football player wants to make a mistake. Okay, they might make the wrong decision, but this is a coachable decision. There's no kid just kicks the ball up the park because they don't want to play football, don't want the ball, especially in academy football. There's no kid that wants to make the wrong pass. So we have to coach the decision. And the decision for me is a tactical awareness, not only of the player on the ball, but the players around them to understand the situation. So space, time, what the coach wants, how we play football, how we're going to progress the attack. On the same side, are we going to change the side? Are we going to rotate the midfield three? Does the wide midfielder come inside? Does our number 9 drop into number 10 position? Does number 10 go into number 9 position? Do we have these sort of formations or principles of play? If so, we need to put it into the academy structure.
So how does Scotland get up to this level then? Is it down to more strategic thinking for us as a nation, for our clubs, for the SFA? Do we just need more tactically aware coaches, better training for coaches? How do you think we start bridging that gap?
I'm sure 100% that we have good coaches. I'm sure of it. The SFA course is sufficient enough for those coaches to understand football. So through their own coaching journey and experience and knowledge and further developing themselves with books and seminars and going online and finding out about different methods of coaching, I think there's coaches certainly out there that have the capacity to coach our kids tactically from a young age. Whether they're encouraged to do so, I'm not sure because I'm not there, Kieran. I can't answer that. I know at one moment, you know, Dundee United had a fantastic academy not a few years ago. Hamilton Academical had a fantastic academy where players were coming through, breaking into first team and actually going and playing in England. But I don't hear too much in recent times, unless I'm wrong, of players coming through and breaking through and going on to have a career, you know, in the bigger leagues. Probably Ryan Gould was probably the last one who went to Portugal, I think. Billy Gilmour, okay, from Rangers. Ben Dock at Liverpool, okay, he's there, but
yeah,
you know, we don't have those young players really breaking through. And I think that for me, okay, my background, probably I should have mentioned it. I'm studying tactical periodization, which is the Portuguese method, the Victor Frade method, which top coaches use now. Mourinho is probably the most famous one that uses it. And we speak about the game model. So the game model is how we play. So it's not just a system of we play 4-3-3. The game model is how our players will build up from goalkeeper in the first phase, how we play in the second phase, how we play in the third phase, how those players interact as a team to develop our style of football. The same in defence. How do we defend? Do we high press? Do we high block? Do we low block? Do we push to the side to press? Do we push them inside to press? How does our formation change in each of those phases of play? Now, that's very, very complex system to try to coach. Now, if you listen to some of the quotes from Mourinho actually says that it doesn't really matter what the other team do, because I'm actually trying to impose what my team does, and your team will have to respond to what my team does. And if you think about that concept in itself, this is what almost convinced me to go to tactical periodization as a coaching method, because we talk about analysing the opposition, how they play, but actually we should be focused on what we do. You know, so if Portugal play Scotland, I'm sure they'll do analysis on Scotland. But for sure, 95% of their training will be on what Portugal do to beat Scotland. I think, maybe not now with Steve Clarke, but I think in the past, potentially our percentage would be higher on what Portugal do and how we stop Portugal playing, and less in what we do as Scotland to try to win the match.
Is that similar to kind of Ange Postecoglou's school of thought? Because he was always about, and obviously still is at Spurs, this is the way I'm going to play, regardless, and it's up to you to stop me. And he didn't really alter that style of play, whether it was Ross County or whether it was Real Madrid.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, if you look at now with Tottenham, he's flying with Tottenham. You know, so there's no coincidence for me. I've been surprised how quickly his impact has been, because I thought there might be an adjustment period there. Tottenham, you know, is a club a little bit in turmoil. So, but it just shows the level of his ability tactically to get that team to play the way he wants them to play and be less concerned of how the opponent will play. And I think that's very, very clear for me. Very clear for me. And it's probably why he had some bad results in European football, because he didn't adjust to how the opponent will play. Yeah. Like Bodo Glimt and certain teams like that. You know, I think he probably could have done better. And might reflect on that himself in terms of, okay, maybe I should have spent a little bit more time on how Bodo Glimt actually press, because if we'd identified that and spent time on it, maybe we could break in their press easier, and maybe we'd have won the match by imposing our own game, for example.
Yeah. And so this method then, is it the Fadi method?
Yes, it's Victor Frade. So it's a Portuguese tactical periodization method. Yeah, I mean it's been around for years and years, but only now they started doing like a master's course on it. It's an 18-month course, which you do online, and then practical actually in Porto. I mean, it's a fantastic coach. Any Scottish coach who has an interest in, I'm not supplying the course or making commission off the course, it might be interesting for them to at least do some research. There's plenty of books out there. You don't have to do the course. There's plenty of books to read on it.
Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting. But, you know, it's important, you know, for everyone to continue to, you know, develop professionally.
Yeah.
And, you know, we certainly as a nation need to be looking beyond, you know, Scotland for, you know, for best practices, whether it's coaching and tactics or whether it's other things in football. So the A license with the SFA, you've obviously just completed that recently, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So from my understanding, that course used to be world renowned, right? And all the top coaches in the world came to Scotland to do it. But from what I understand now, that's no longer the case, right? Scotland is perhaps no longer seen as the place to go and do your coaching badges.
I mean, Jose Mourinho did his in Scotland. Victor Boas, the Wolves coach Nunes did in Scotland. So these are 3 top-level coaches in the world. I'm not sure now what the change has been in terms of the UEFA Pro license. Certainly, if I take my own experience of the license, I think it was a fantastic experience. There's still people from around the world on the course, from America, from Spain, from Portugal, actually, from Italy, Scandinavian countries. So there's still people from around the world on the A license course. I think it was a new format in terms of what they were doing this year. I believe that's true. but we had the coaching practice, and we also had our online tutorials with a portfolio book to complete. Now, the portfolio book for me, working in football was a lot of work, but I think if you really go in depth into that portfolio book, you can pull out a lot of information which will help you be a better coach. What I don't think, or what I think could be improved, is the demand on the candidates for the A license to develop themselves further in that portfolio. So the demand on what actually needs to be done in the portfolio could be a little bit higher in some sections, probably the tactical section, because it has leadership skills, it has psychological, it has physiology, it has return to play, it ticks all the boxes along the way. It has the tactical components, and there's a very, very high level of tactical components. But I think maybe something like go and study another method of coaching, or go and find out about a method of coaching and present that in your portfolio, for instance, to get the candidate maybe to go and think about, okay, how does Germany do it? Go and visit the academy in Germany and do it, and do like a report on the academy. I think you have to do that in your pro license, I'm sure. But I think we're talking now about grassroots coaches, and those grassroots coaches are coaching the future. So I think for them, I think it would also be useful to do as well, is to go and find out another coaching method in another country and report back on that. And it may actually help the SFA as well collect that data and information and analysis and compile their own thoughts, because we have to hand the portfolio in as part of our grading.
And so for you then, is the next step to do a pro license, and then are you potentially looking at maybe moving into management or head coaching? What's the plan for you?
Yeah, so the career journey for me, Kieran, is a good question. I've answered this quite a few times on podcasts. So I'm still on the journey. So now it's 17 years. I've had a few positions now as coach, assistant coach at Hajduk for 8 months, and Bulgaria I'm doing some coaching modes of training, so involved in the coaching process. So I'm progressing into coach. The next step for me, yes, would be to the pro license, and then go to head coach if it's possible, or if it's for me. I think I need to find out now in the next 2-3 years if the coaching pathway is really for me. But I think my dream, if I talk about my dream, is to be head coach. I always say to people that my dream is to win the Champions League. I won't hide from that dream. And I know in Scotland we don't tend to project our dreams as much as other countries, but you know, I wasn't good enough to play football. So what's the next step? Okay, it's to win the Champions League as a head coach, and that's how I sort of approach it now. That's my dream, and if I fall short, at least I tried.
Nice. Well, I hope you get there so that I can say I've got a Champions League winning manager on my podcast.
Yeah, that would be nice. I could come back and do a follow-up for you. That would be fantastic.
Yes, please. That'd be great. Good. Okay. So if you had a magic wand and you could change one thing about Scottish football, what would it be?
I think I would like to see our level of tactical content in our Premier League increase. I think that would probably be the main one for me, because when I watch games, I want to see teams play football. I want to see, my own understanding of football is to score as many goals as you can, to score more goals than your opponent. It's not to stop, it is to stop teams scoring. But ultimately, if I score 5 goals, you score 4, I win the match. So my dream is to see attacking football with possession, but I want to see the small teams. I want to see Livingston against St Mirren, and I want to see players play football and take the ball and go 1v1. I want to see goals and attacking football. So that would be the one thing that changes, to see a more attacking, attractive, aggressive football in the Premier League.
How far away are we, do you think? I mean, are we still, are we getting better, do you think, if you look at the Premier League, you know, or are we still stuck in quite an old school style?
I think it's got better. I think we've got to say it's got better. I think it has got better. What I think the block is maybe down below. I think, you know, in periods, Hearts and Hibs and Aberdeen do well, and You get a Dundee United that come and do well for a year or two. Well, then you get a Livingston do well for 1 year, a Hamilton do well for 1 year, but it's not consistent. It's not consistently having that same style of play to be competitive and allow the kids to come through. If I go back to the stat in Croatia, 75 players played. It's an average of 7.5 per team. I would love to see Scottish football with Scottish players playing attractive, free-scoring football, where the players don't have fear to take the ball and to play. They don't have fear. And I want to see the crowds cheer for 1v1 when the player goes past the player, not when the player tackles the player. I don't want to see the crowd go crazy when we win a header. I want to see the crowd go crazy when we play a nice pass like Messi. This is what I would like to see. This would be special for me, I think. And I think Ange brought that. I think Ange really brought that, I think he brought that. I think the fans, and now you look at Celtic, they still play good football, but there's a big difference between the Ange team and now the Brendan team. Now Rangers changed their manager. What will be the difference? Will they bring a Scottish manager? Will they bring a European manager? Which is another big thing. Our two big clubs have foreign coaches. Okay, Brendan Rodgers is Irish, but he's been in England for most of his career. And I think those things for me are huge in Scottish football. Is to bring back passion and love of a great style of football play. Where we take on players 1v1, we make that final pass, we're shooting on goal. It's attractive football. And I think it was at that before. I think we lost our way and became blood and thunder and heart and, die on the pitch and blood on the shirt. I think we've come through that now, and I think it's got better. I think the players are of a better standard. But I think we need to make them more creative and more willing to play a level of football that can compete at the highest level, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the national team, a lot of the players play down south or play abroad. So their exposure is to a different level of football, a different style of football.
Yeah.
Even Arsene Wenger recently did a blueprint on the future of football. And he spoke about the average level of players, the lack of creativity, the lack of strikers. He also spoke about we need to bring back street football. We need to bring back position-specific work. So if we look at those 5 things, lack of strikers, lack of creativity, average level of players, this is around the world. It's not just Scotland. He talked about bringing back street football. He talked about bringing back position-specific football. Now, if I look at Croatian football has street football. They have strikers. They don't have a lack of creativity. They don't have an average level of player, and they do a lot of position-specific work. So the 5 things that Arsene Wenger said was a blueprint for football, the future of football, I think Croatia are ahead of the curve.
Okay.
So I know I'm really giving up a big thumbs up here to Croatian football, but it's really my, I've worked in Bulgaria, I've worked in Romania, I've worked in Scotland. I don't want to be disrespectful to our home country, but I think we can make big strides. I think we can not tackle the problem. I think we can make our football better. It's not a problem. We need to find a solution.
Good. Oh, that's a nice positive note to end on. I like that. And it's not being disparaging, because, we have to be honest. Obviously we all love Scottish football, but what Croatia are doing, the fact they're able to get to World Cup finals, etc., with a population of 4 million, there's some seriously, amazing stuff going on. Whether it's in youth development or whether it's more strategic, from the top of the governing body, Scotland needs to start looking at these other countries and then cherry picking the stuff that works and incorporating it into our game. So
I would say, Lord, that the big thing that Croatia do have is the weather.
Oh yeah.
they have fantastic weather.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's a big factor.
Yeah, that would be nice to have. But you can't have it all. And I've heard it said that if Scotland had beautiful weather, then everyone in the world would want to live in our country.
The best country in the world.
It would be. So can't have it all. Listen, Ian, thank you so much, and really appreciate you, shedding some light on some of the stuff in Croatia in particular that doesn't necessarily, make headlines. Especially the stats about 75 Croatian players in their top flight. Stuff like that. Really good to pull back the curtain, and will help us back home realize some of the good stuff that's going on. So thank you again for coming on the podcast, and we'll get you back once you've won the Champions League.
Thanks, Kieran. That would be great. I look forward to that one.